we should be live. We should be live. I think we're live. Hello, everybody. We're live. So, hey, everybody. Thank you for waiting. We actually saw a couple of you were waiting, so thank you for everybody that was waiting during this. But we have some interesting news for you today. I'm here with Daniel as usual. Again, you should subscribe to his channel. Links in the description. Say hi, Daniel. Introduce yourself, even though I just did that for you.
So if you guys didn't notice, I'm Daniel. And if you did, then this is redundant. So let's go on.
Okay, cool. So anyway, we have a chat down there, so feel free to throw shit in chat and talk to us because we like to answer questions and communicate with people. But we have lots of topics actually to talk about today, so this might be a little bit of a late one.
I will be right back.
Why? Oh my gosh! At the beginning of the stream. Oh my gosh! This is the level of professionalism that we have. We have Daniel who's just spilled stuff. And we have me who has messy hair and hasn't taken a shower. This is pretty great. Okay, so the first thing is on something that he came up with, so I have no idea what it's about. So I'm gonna go ahead and say
I can do it.
Okay, you're here now. Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, what this first topic is that after the recent congressional issue involving ISPs and selling data, Verizon was very quick to announce that they will be pre-installing an app on phones. Now, initially, they didn't really clarify, so people kind of really freaked out, which is part of why I wanted to touch on this. It is only on one phone for now, and you have to opt in for now. Now, that could all change down the line, but yeah, essentially what this does is it tracks app downloads and uses that type of data and app usage details in order to sell your data to advertisers to get better advertisements for higher money for Verizon, which means ads on your phone.
So
which
bad.
Everybody loves.
That pisses me off. Makes me angry. So is that pretty much everything about that? Is there any specific details that we know? I mean, what phone is it on?
The LG
K20V?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's probably not an extraordinarily popular device.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially what they're doing is they're testing it on one device, and when it works, they'll start offering it on others, and then I'm sure 6 months, a year down the line is when they'll switch it to on by default rather than having to opt in. Because that's usually how this type of stuff goes. If they want to hide what they're doing, they will announce it, let the anger come out, but let it be opt-in so people don't freak out, and then they'll change their mind later.
Yep, and they'll try and do it subtly enough that people don't really notice too much until some big news site talks about it, and then everybody freaks out. Yeah, that kind of stuff, though, it just makes me angry, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a little bit frustrated with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't,
privacy.
Yeah, it's not needed. Why would you think privacy is needed? That's dumb.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you're not doing anything wrong, then all of your data should be online for everyone.
Didn't you know that, Daniel?
Yeah.
I knew that. That's just how it should be.
That's why I do everything wrong. That way I have a reason to need privacy.
That's a good point. I like reasons to need privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Good job. Okay, so that's it for that.
Yeah, that was a quick one.
Yeah, that was a very quick one. The next one you know a lot more about than me.
Yeah,
so I'm going to let you take over this one for the most part as well while I figure out how to log into my Twitter account.
This is kind of a big deal. So Microsoft has been teasing the Scorpio for quite some time. It was designed to be their mid-generation refresh, similar to the PlayStation 4 Pro, only Microsoft was going to take an extra year to release it and go all out, and they were claiming native 4K. And a lot of people were skeptical about that because, well, it's a console.
It is, although the PS4 Pro does do some native 4K stuff.
Some, but not all together, which is what Microsoft was claiming with the Scorpio. It would be a straight-up 4K console.
Right. Whereas the PS4 Pro, though, isn't there more and more stuff coming out at native 4K, correct?
I mean, a majority of the higher graphics titles come out at something like 14 or 1600p, and then use the checkerboarding upscaling, which when you do that, you get roughly like, I mean, you can get as much as like 90% of the 4K quality. So you're not really losing much. It's like minor details, which if you're playing on a 4K TV, which is what most console gamers do,
you won't really notice. Yeah. Although one thing is I did see Digital Foundry tested all of the 4K native games for PS4 Pro.
Mhm.
But I didn't actually look into the
Yeah.
spec or how it outperformed. But
if anyone is interested in the PS4 Pro's upscaling, Digital Foundry has an amazing article talking about how well that works and why it's so good. I highly recommend checking that out. But speaking of Digital Foundry, a lot of people got really hyped for the Scorpio when Microsoft and Digital Foundry confirmed that they were letting Digital Foundry handle the spec reveal. That shows confidence.
Digital Foundry knows what they're doing.
Yeah, that shows some strong confidence in the hardware. If they're letting one of the most nitpicky hardware reviewing sites or services show off the hardware.
I think a lot of people haven't heard of Digital Foundry. I actually didn't hear about them until fairly recently, so I figure I'll brush up on them a little bit. They're in the UK, correct?
Yes, they are actually part of Eurogamer.
Right, they're part of Eurogamer. Are they in the UK or are they in Australia?
I think they're in the UK, which would make sense because it's Eurogamer, not Australia.
I know. I thought there was something that, anyway, point is, they're kind of like some of you on this, probably, I've talked about them before, you know who PC Perspective is. Digital Foundry's like the UK's version of them. They are serious geniuses and they really know what they're doing.
And they don't stick to just PC stuff. They go very in-depth on console stuff too, which is really nice.
And console versus PC in actual scientific method base, which is really cool to see. Instead of just, here's my opinion.
For people that are interested in kind of seeing how good and how detailed they are, check out literally any video on their YouTube channel that involves a game, because they show you literally graphs of the frame rate live as it's happening on their screen as they test it. Like, they analyze the frame rate exactly, perfectly.
It's better than anybody else.
Yeah. If you watch like their Breath of the Wild video for the 1.11 patch, really good, really detailed. Back to the Xbox Scorpio though, they were the ones that got to show off the specs, which already showed off a lot of confidence, and the specs make you realize why. So what we have is similar to the Xbox One, it's 8 cores, and it's based off of Jaguar, but in this case, it's much more heavily modified, and the cores are running at a much higher clock. It's 2.3 gigahertz for the clock on the CPU. And for the GPU, we have 40 compute cores, so that's 4 more than the RX 480, and it's running at 1172 megahertz. There's 12 gigs of GDDR5 RAM. You have 4 gigs dedicated for the OS, because now the home screen will run at native 4K. So that's why they need the extra gig compared to the Xbox One, which uses 3.
Right.
And then games go from 5 gigs on the Xbox One to having 8 gigs dedicated to them, which is absolutely great. More memory for games is just not a bad thing.
It really isn't. Well, I mean, you're trying to push 4K in particular. You need 4 gigs. You need more than 6, realistically. 6 is like the minimum for 4K.
Yeah. And then the memory bandwidth has been increased substantially. I think the ES RAM on the Xbox One, which was only a very small amount of it, had like a 200 gigabits or gigabytes a second memory bandwidth. On the Scorpio, it's 326. And then supposedly it'll include a 1 terabyte hard drive, 4K Blu-ray player, and all that. The most interesting thing about what they're doing with the Scorpio is the uniqueness of the hardware. So the GPU is a very custom version of an AMD GPU. The CPU is a very custom version of a Jaguar chip. Then
Which is from is Jaguar from AMD?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's essentially a modified version of what's in the PS4 and the Xbox One currently.
Right, I'm surprised I didn't know that. Anyway, continue.
And then, though, they're putting in some dedicated, brand new custom hardware, including what I think is the most unique part of this, the dedicated DirectX 12 processing unit. What this will allow it to do is, for draw calls that pull upon DX12, instead of needing hundreds or thousands of CPU calls, it's 11.
Or less.
It'll be 9 for state changes and 11 for the majority of things.
It's really interesting. I'm actually, even though I'm a PC guy, somewhat excited about this. The biggest problem I see here with the spec list, in my opinion, is the fact that there's still no solid state drive. I'm sure there'll be a solid state drive option, but I feel like they should, bare minimum, and maybe it is, and they just haven't said, an SSHD. They need a solid state hybrid so that they can have that OS, so you flick it on, it's
What
ready to go.
I expect to happen is launch day, 1 terabyte disk drive. And then 6 months down the line, they start including solid states in them, or a year. Something where they can, because right now, like, sure, they're going to be way more powerful than the PS4 Pro realistically. But if you're, I mean, I don't see this being anything less than like $450. I actually expect $500. And if we're looking at $500 for that versus the PS4 Pro's $400, but by the time the Scorpio releases, it'll have been out for over a year.
Yeah,
so
that's
they could
true.
drop it to $350 and include a game or two, and now they're way ahead in price.
Right.
And
okay.
as we saw with the Xbox One versus the PS3, price matters way more than spec.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Price is a big deal, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm just interested. I mean, personally, that's the thing that I worry about a little bit. Consoles just have horridly slow load times. Actually, in game too, though, an SSHD wouldn't help too much with that. I just prefer gaming.
Yeah.
I mean, not all games. It's just whatever it is. Even hard drives running in consoles for whatever reason feel.
Most consoles are 5,400 RPM drives.
Oh, that's right.
No console as of yet has come with 7,200.
Right, and they're probably not the same. They're cheaper drives, so their platter density isn't as higher, so they can't.
Yeah, most likely
as fast. Yeah.
And then there's one other big thing that Microsoft is doing in order to get the most out of the CPU that they can. There's a reason that they can get up to that 2.3 gigahertz when they've never really been able to do that on consoles before while hitting their power needs. And that's because what they're doing is each motherboard for each one of these systems will handle power delivery slightly differently to match the slight difference is in the silicon of the CPUs.
Right, which is really cool. That's a really cool thing.
They're custom modifying the boards to fit the CPUs better. They're going all out. They're essentially just every little thing that they can in order to make this better. They are.
Right. Well, they're modifying the voltage regulation system on the board is what it is.
Yeah.
The voltage is really the only real thing you can dynamically adjust without crashing the CPU.
Yeah. But what's also really cool is because normally when you're making a console, the games have to optimize for the hardware. But because this is a mid-generation refresh and they had games to look at how they performed and how they bottlenecked on the previous system, what they're doing is they actually looked at games and took together a majority of what things bottlenecked regularly and modified the hardware to fix those bottlenecks. So if there was something specific on the GPU they needed to bump up, they did. Right.
It's pretty cool. I'm impressed with what they're doing. The only thing I'll say is I think this is gonna sound really fucked, but I think this might piss you off, I guess what I should say. I think what sparked this is the PC industry.
Oh no, it's not a secret. No, they said that.
Mid-generation refreshes, I haven't been paying attention to consoles other than the Switch.
The mid-generation refreshes are specifically designed to combat PCs now being so cost-effective for the performance that they are starting to steal a significant amount of the market share. And more importantly, the long-term look at it. So like you look at this, nothing is going to compete with this for price if this launches at say $500.
Yeah. Although I have a feeling it's going to be 800 to 1,000.
Huh?
I have a feeling
no way. No.
I don't know. I mean, what's the price of the PS4 Pro again?
$400.
Yeah, I don't know. I
mean, they used Jaguar to keep the cost down.
Right, and I get that.
They're using a 1 terabyte hard drive. A lot of the other stuff in here is just, I mean, like, sure, it's using like some custom hardware, but then you look at like the 4K Blu-ray player. They already have that in the Xbox One S, so that's going to pull the price down. They're getting rid of things like there's no more Connect port, so that's going to help bring the cost down because they don't have to handle Connect processing.
Yeah, okay. I suppose. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
There's no way it would sell well if it was above 500.
Right. That's my worry is that they're going to price it as a premium product and therefore sell less of them. And if they price it as I'm not saying they will. I'm saying that if they price it at too premium of a price, people are going to go, well, I'm going to spend the same or a little bit more for a PC because it can do more.
Yeah.
So they have to do it right, otherwise it's not going to be successful. I hope it's successful. I mean, competition's good.
Realistically, we're probably going to look at either $450 for just the system or $500 with the game. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just make that assumption right now. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see, but Microsoft knows from the launch of the Xbox One that pricing it too high will make them lose. That is part of why the Xbox One was a failure at launch, was because it was $500. So they know that they can't do that. And they've been doing very well at keeping the cost down, seeing as how the Xbox One S has a 4K Blu-ray player and is not that expensive.
Yeah, no, I get you. So I hope that they're able to price it right. You know, and the key with consoles really is how little of a profit margin can we realistically suffer with still some availability to give discounts for holidays.
It's not that uncommon for Sony and Microsoft to sell consoles at a loss initially. So
yeah, although no, I wouldn't think they'd be selling it at a loss initially. What I would think they'd be doing is selling it at a loss when it goes on sale.
They almost always sell it at a loss at launch.
But the price only goes down over time. Are you just talking about how do they make their money then?
From the games.
That's it?
Yeah, that's literally the games and Xbox Live is the majority of their profit.
It's the overpriced. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like if you look at like even like the Wii U, that was Nintendo's first system they ever sold for a loss, but they made their money back with one game sale.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Okay, which is actually one of the main arguments that a lot of people have on the PC side is we don't pay for any sort of online services, and we generally get the games for substantially less money, even if you don't go through bullshit like G2A.
I mean, at this point now, Sony and Microsoft both do sales more regularly than Steam. So I wouldn't really, I mean, that's something that people need to actually take a look at when they talk about that argument for PC, because their sales all the time. There's a big sale right now. I mean, like I can get Dishonored 2 for half off on PS4 from Sony.
Yeah, they've been competing better in that area.
Sony has a Humble Bundle going on right now.
Right. If we were talking 2 or 3 years ago, it was a completely different story. Yeah. But yeah, I guess they are trying to compete, and I do like to see competition, and this could potentially lower the prices of GPUs for the PC. Which would be good. Well, potentially.
It's custom hardware, so I doubt it. But
yeah. Well, but
one other thing I do want to talk about with this is the actual performance, because they did actually get a look at some games. So with Forza Motorsport 6, this was the main thing that they got shown off to them. So that game, for one, they were able to port the engine over to work with the Scorpio and be able to put in their game and upgrade it within 2 days.
Which is super cool.
And the game worked after that. Like that's all they had to do was get the engine ported, and they were pretty much good. And then what they did was with 4K, native 4K running the game, they were pretty much like the average GPU usage was in the 60s. And I don't think they ever even got to like 75. I know it was like low 70% that they got to. And then they tried using it on the equivalent of PC's ultra settings for Forza 6, because it's on the PC as well. And they never hit, I think the max CPU or GPU usage was like 88%. So they still had headroom after bumping it up to ultra at 4K.
Assuming the CPU wasn't causing a bottleneck, and that was the reason for the lower GPU usage.
It wasn't.
Well, that's something that
Digital Foundry would have. Well, okay, for one, it was hitting a stable 60 FPS. So even if it was only at 88%, for the game itself, I mean, assuming they weren't going to
right. No, it's totally fine. Right. What I'm saying is the GPU may be capable of more. What I'm saying is that might have been very close to the limit of the CPU.
You need to realize is that DX12 processing unit for DX12 optimized games, which Forza 6 is, it can cut the CPU usage in nearly half. Yeah,
no, I know. I'm saying I would like to see not only some CPU usage graphs, but well, the thing is too, was there any sort of a frame rate limiting system on it? I haven't watched it yet. That's why I'm asking.
It was just running at 60.
It's flat.
Yeah.
There was no ups. Okay, so yeah, there was some kind of limiter put in place then as well.
Yeah, I mean, because
we don't really know what the limit of the hardware was at that point, but all that matters is that it's hitting a solid 60, because that's in my mind the bare minimum. Although I'm starting to want to get a 120 hertz panel myself, but anyway, but a 60 is the minimum for being
at TVs. TVs, most of them don't do above 60, and the ones that do fake it. So
no, I get you. No, I'm saying though the next step for consoles, but they're always lacking behind in a lot of the things like that, which is okay because it's expensive.
Well, and I mean, and now people are actually starting to wonder if Microsoft has changed their mind on this. But originally, one of the big things for the Scorpio was going to be VR. They were actually more worried about VR.
They were
than
targeting
they were 4K.
that. Yeah, I think VR is not taking off the way they expected it. So they're probably not
I mean, they don't really know because I mean, Sony sold over 1 million PSVRs.
This is true. This is true. I mean, I think they think though that it's not getting the grasp.
Mm-hmm.
The industry isn't grasping it the way they expected, especially when it comes to developers.
I mean,
I hope it does. I'm not saying that it shouldn't. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with VR. I'm saying if you look at the market and the current amount of games, it's like most of the developers aren't giving a shit.
The biggest issue and the reason that they aren't giving a shit is because a lack of people having them, and that the problem with that is that up until the PSVR, there was no actual like consumer VR headset. Sure, there was the Vive and the Rift, but the amount of people that have a high-end PC good enough to run VR, and then on top of that, were willing to drop $700 to $800 on a VR headset and the controllers was so minimal. And then Sony comes out with a VR headset that works on the PS4 and a new PS4 Pro, and they've sold over 1 million. I guarantee you, a big portion of their E3 event is going to be VR games.
No, and you're probably right. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that.
That's going to be the start of the shift. And I think that if Microsoft doesn't get on board with the Scorpio, they've pretty much given up on VR for this generation. They will wait until the Xbox 720 or 2 or whatever they call it.
Right. They might have something planned in the background for the Scorpio in VR.
Yeah. I hope that they don't drop their plans because they said that originally it was supposed to be a high-end VR machine.
Right, and the thing is, if it can run native 4K, it shouldn't have too much. Yeah, it shouldn't have trouble running, 1080p or 1440p panels at like 100 or more frames per second.
Yeah. I mean, the Vive and the Rift only run at 90.
I know. I hate that though. That needs to be fixed. The VR needs to be running at 120 and up.
I mean, at 90 is where it actually matters for motion sickness.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying it still makes a difference. I mean, I'm sorry, but if I can tell on a panel sitting in front of me the difference between 90 and 120, I'm pretty sure I can tell when it's on my eyeballs.
Yeah, but how many fast-paced competitive games are you playing on
VR? Yeah,
there's literally one, and it's on PS4, not on PC. It's called Rigs.
What frame rate is the PSVR running at?
It depends on the game. It can handle either 60 doubled to 120, 90, or native 120.
Okay, interesting.
The headset itself can do 120.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So shall we move on to the next topic, which I want to fucking rage about, even though I'm kind of
one second. There was one last thing with the Scorpio because we kind of kept going off on sidetracks. They did announce that how the Scorpio would handle current Xbox One games and Xbox 360 backwards compatibility games. So all Xbox 360 backwards compatibility games will run on the Scorpio just out of the gate. All Xbox One games will run on the Scorpio out of the gate better. So any games that had frame rate fluctuations will hit whatever their frame rate cap is consistently 100% of the time for pretty much every game. So if the game runs at 30 but fluctuated on the Xbox One, it's just a solid 30. If the game runs at 60 and was fluctuating, it's a solid 60 automatically. Developers can choose to then bump it up further. So if there was a game running at 30, they could bump it up to 60, whatever. But just by default, it just keeps it at where it's supposed to be. And then for games that use dynamic resolution, so games like Gears of War, Witcher, Halo, they all will be locked to their maximum resolution by default.
Okay. Which is good. That's exactly how it should be. Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
Then they're also forcing 16x anti-aliasing on all games. On all Xbox One games, like so non-Scorpio optimized games, automatically upgraded.
Anti-aliasing?
Yes.
That's really weird, and I'll tell you why. Anti-aliasing becomes a much lower priority when resolution goes up.
Well, yeah, but this is for the games that are not optimized for the Scorpio.
I thought you meant. Sorry. I thought you meant all the previous
current
games.
Xbox One games that are out now
right.
will look better on this, both in frame rate and resolution.
Right, because if they're running at 1080 and being upscaled to 4K, then anti-aliasing will make a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, and plus, I guess a 4K TV really anti-aliasing helps with larger pixels being fixed. That's really what it is. It's
And then last thing as far as the Scorpio optimized games go, I mean, this is a nice difference from the PS4. So all Scorpio games, you can set the render resolution, and it does not matter what display you are running it on, and it will render it those. So like if you're playing a game in 4K on a 1080p display, it'll just do the downsampling. Whereas with the PS4 Pro, that is something the developers have to put in themselves.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. That is very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next topic. Even though you're
the Titan XP. Go ahead. I know you want to rant.
Oh my God. Oh, first I want to say that. Hi, I am from Germany. We have a comment. Thank you for watching from Germany. Much appreciated. So NVIDIA. Well, first I'll say NVIDIA's marketing team does have no fucking idea what they're doing. Second thing I'll say is we have a new Titan X, everybody. A new Titan XP. You know you know how we called the Titan X Pascal the Titan XP because we already had a Titan X that was the Maxwell card. Well, we have the Titan XP. Now we have the Titan XP. It's a little p though, not a big P like most people did, or as I'm gonna call it because it makes it way easier to identify, especially when using my voice, the Titan XP2. Okay, so it is a new version of the older Titan X running on the Pascal architecture.
I think we should call it the Titan XP 1.5.
That'd be much better. Titan XP 1.5.
Everyone always calls every little console thing 1.5. This is a move more annoying than what any console manufacturer has ever done.
Everybody is actually pretty mad about this.
Yeah.
So all right, the Titan XP 1.5 is this new GPU from NVIDIA running on the same. It's actually the same GP 102 core, correct? 102, right? Yeah.
Except it's the full GP 102.
Full unlocked, like all cores open GP 102, which
is what every other Titan has been ever, was the full unlocked version of this.
Right. Well, what happened here though is we saw so with Pascal, I know why this happened and why we didn't see it. And I'll explain in a minute after my rant's done, because there is actual reasoning when it comes to CPU and silicon manufacturing of why this happened. But the Titan XP 1.5 has 3,840 CUDA cores versus the 3,005 something. Let me I'm having troubles here. Let me find out from NVIDIA how many Titan X. I can't remember the CUDA core count, so I gotta look this up really quick. I'm sorry, everybody. We were looking at the 3,584. That is the amount that the original Titan X had, Titan XP. Now we have the Titan XP 1.5 that has 3,840. Hey, Daniel, actually, I have something going on. Can you talk about it for a minute?
Yeah.
Sorry to leave everybody.
So the Titan XP, the new one, is 3,840 CUDA cores, like you mentioned. And then as far as the clock speeds go, the boost clock is listed at 1582 versus the Titan XP version 1 at 1531. The big issue with that is that they don't actually list the base clock, so I'm not quite sure what that is right now, and I haven't seen a press release that mentioned it. So we don't actually know what the base clock is. And then as far as the RAM goes, this was another thing that got a slight change. So it's still using 12 gigs of GDDR5X, but similar to how we saw the 1070 get a slight bump and the 1080 get a slight bump in RAM speed, this is running at 11.4 gigabits per second versus the Titan XP 1.0's 10 gigabits per second. So the memory speed did get a bump up as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. I'm so sorry for that interruption. Yeah, so what'd you go over? The specs?
Yeah, I talked about the boost clock speed since there's no base clock listed, and then I talked about the RAM.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, 12 gigabytes GDDR5. Yeah, faster, higher memory bandwidth there, but still, honestly, 12 gigs. So anyway, the big point here of what happened, basically, everybody's pissed off because we had the Titan XP, the original Pascal Titan X, and then the 1080 Ti came out after that. That was, hey, here's this thing, same thing but better, and $500 less, which pissed off everybody that bought the original Titan XP because they're like, oh shit, we kind of got ripped off. But a lot of them were like, okay, I won't get too mad because we're early adopters. Early adopters pay a premium. That's a big one in this case, but they were kind of okay with it. They were kind of, people understood some. Now this new card comes in at $1,200 again, just like the original Titan XP. which makes sense, except for now everybody that bought an original Titan XP is super pissed off because all of a sudden now they no longer have this special card. They have a faster version of the same fucking thing that beats it out. So people are pretty pissed about that. But
and one other thing I want to mention that's pissing people off, especially reviewers in this case, so they already did this with the Titan XP1, where they tried to claim it wasn't a gaming card. It wasn't a GeForce card, despite the fact that it literally says GeForce GTX on it, and on their fucking website, it literally lists gaming performance as one of the key selling points. And they're doing that again on the Titan XP. If you watch Jay's 2 cents video, he mentioned how they once again said, no, it's a deep learning card, not a gaming card. But I'm looking at their website right now. Under World's Most Advanced GPU Architecture, the middle option is latest gaming technology, and the next one is next gen VR. So 2 of the 3 things that they list as selling points are gaming tech.
Yeah. They can't seem to make a decision about what to consider it, whether it's a gaming card or a deep learning card. And that's making everybody mad.
Yeah, they advertise it as a gaming card to sell it,
but then
to
they
people
tell everybody
to spend the money, but then they won't give them out to reviewers claiming it's a deep learning card.
Yeah, and they're telling, it's frustrating. And at that point, I don't even feel like it's deep learning card. I feel like it's...
Don't get me wrong. It is better for deep learning than any other $1,200 card.
Right.
That being said, quit advertising it as a gaming card and then telling reviewers something else.
Yeah, it's freaking
because you're lying to one of us. Lying to reviewers is probably not the best idea. Lying to consumers is definitely not the best idea.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Just tell us what the fucking card is.
Right. So it's really annoying, and all the people that bought the original Titan XP are pissed now. Especially, there were some people that were still buying the Titan XP even after the 1080 Ti came out because they were like, well, I get to say it's a Titan XP, I get a little bit more VRAM, and I have loads of cash. And now all of a sudden they're like, I just spent $1,200 or $2,400 on cards just to be replaced by the next best thing recently without any heads up or warning. Now, the other thing about this is a lot of people that bought the 1080 Ti because it was the fastest performing gaming GPU at the time are going to be super pissed because, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of people that buy the 1080 Ti, if they had the money to spend to buy the Titan XP2, XP 1.5, they would have if it was existent. You know, at that point, they would have rather had the better thing. There was nothing better than the 1080 Ti at the time, and there was no warning that this was even going to really happen. So.
And they canceled the old Titan XP. It's no longer for sale. There wasn't a price drop or anything. They just stopped selling the card.
Yeah, which is stupid, first off. Well, I mean, the 1080 Ti has taken over it, but... Yeah, and the fact that this is... It just makes me mad, man. It makes me mad.
None of what they're doing makes sense.
Not at all. I will get, though... Here, all right, so I'll get into the reason when it comes to manufacturing actual processor silicon and stuff of why this happened. So basically what happens is when a company first, whether it's TSMC, Global Foundries, Intel, Samsung, whoever's making the silicon, when they originally come out with it for the first, production models of it, they usually can't get the same yields out of the wafers that they can at a later point in time. And so basically what it is, it had, what was it? It was 3580, I think it was. I keep reading the number anyway. How many ever CUDA cores the original Titan XP had was the best, most realistic yield they could get out of that chip. They basically, NVIDIA and probably TSMC, their manufacturer for the silicon, said, hey, we can't realistically deliver a lot of chips with more cores than this that actually function without having major problems or just not working at all. And so they had to limit it down to that amount. Basically, they have to find a balance of how many chips can we get out of it versus how many are we going to sell and the premium price that we are going to sell with it or sell it for. So basically what's happened is the manufacturing process has improved. TSMC's gotten better when it comes to the way they manufacture the silicon and is having better yields now, which is normal over time. They will figure out minor tweaks basically in the manufacturing process to get better yields. And so basically what's happened now is the 1080 Ti was so cheap because it was technically cheaper to produce that GPU because they were able to get those yields more easily, meaning they had more chips of that 3580 CUDA core count per wafer, so they could sell it for less money. And now they've determined that they have enough. I'm guessing it's a combination of both, but they basically determined that now we can get 3840 CUDA cores realistically without having massive amounts of scrap chips trying to get that kind of that amount of core count. So basically, they're able to get 3840 CUDA cores on a lot of these now. Their yields are better, so they're getting that. And also probably the idea that since the 1080 Ti just launched and Titan XP was already out, they're not going to sell as many of these probably as the original Titan XP and as the 1080 Ti. So they're probably not as worried about getting as good of yields as maybe the Titan XP originally. But the biggest point basically is the reason it's happening is they are able to physically get more CUDA cores fully functional out of the same wafer, so they're able to actually realistically sell a product like that. They're not getting freaking 3 cores per wafer or something, or 3 chips per wafer that are actually functioning at that core count. Does that make sense? I hope. Yeah. So that's basically the whole reasoning behind it. So I understand why NVIDIA did it. The problem is the whole marketing segment of it is completely broken.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, they should have called it something else or done something else.
Here's what I think that they should do. Every generation, have it be the Titan X and then the letter of whatever that generation is. So Pascal, Maxwell, whatever. But then since they generally release multiple generations of cards within an architecture, have it just a number after. So you have Titan X, Titan XM, Titan XP, Titan XP2, Titan XV, Titan XV2. Just do that regularly. At least something that is consistent and makes sense. Not Titan X, Titan X.
Yeah. And something that people can kind of expect. And the thing is too, okay, actually I should add one more thing about the process technology. So what I mean when they came out with a new core isn't so much like new architecture, but the fact that there was a die shrink. So TSMC previously wasn't experienced in manufacturing 14 nanometer chips, which is what these are. And so basically their yields have gotten better on the 14 nanometer process. So that's really what I'm trying to get at. And the reason the 1080 Ti is clocked higher is because their yields have also gotten better. The 14 nanometer process has improved. So I should mention that. But yeah, that's essentially what's going on there. But it's just the marketing system that's completely broken, and the fact that they keep telling everybody that it's a deep learning card, which is completely wrong. It's completely wrong to tell people that, and it's not a gaming card when it is a gaming card, clearly, because you manufacture it with the fucking gaming logo on the side of it.
Yeah.
It's just it's frustrating at that point,
Yeah. At this point, I think that what they should be doing is releasing the GTX should end at the X80 Ti cards. Then they should release a separate lineup of cards that are within the Titan range that have good performance, but are also for things more than just gaming. So like the Titan XP or XP 1.5, where it's a gaming and a deep learning card, or like the previous Titans were like a gaming and a workstation card combined. They should have a separate lineup that is not advertised as GeForce GTX. It can still do gaming, but it has some slight differences and is advertised as such.
Right.
Simple
Yeah,
as
exactly. Yeah. Also I wanted to mention one thing. It actually looks like okay, I actually said this incorrectly. TSMC is no longer the manufacturer for the silicon for NVIDIA. It's actually Samsung. Samsung is the one that makes it. So yeah, because that actually makes even more sense in this situation. I wouldn't expect TSMC's 14 nanometer to improve that quickly. Samsung's a better silicon manufacturer than them. So anyway, Samsung.
If you want proof by that, there's a reason Apple chooses them.
Yeah, Samsung is probably the best silicon manufacturer other than maybe Intel, although that's kind of changing. Samsung's kind of surpassing them. After that would be Intel and or Global Foundries, then TSMC's down a little bit lower in my personal research.
Yeah, like, I mean, for reference, the Xbox Scorpio is running TSMC manufactured stuff, but they're not doing 14 nanometer, they're doing 16.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So TSMC's just, they're not as good from my experience. But
Mhm.
Global Foundries has been impressive with the Ryzen chips of what the yields they've been able to get, considering they just jumped to that, and considering the clock speeds they're able to get. Because clock speeds, especially on a die shrink, when the manufacturing process hasn't been completely refined, the higher clock speeds is really hard to get. If you look at here, like these Pascal chips, even though they're obviously it's a GPU, not a CPU, but they're running out, 1.5 gigahertz versus the 4 gigahertz that Global Foundries is getting out of the Ryzen chips. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, do you want to talk about the next topic?
Yeah, so there's some other info I'll add other than what's in the article here, but for the DDR5 standard will be not releasing next year, but it will be finalized next year, which means we'll start to see chips. Probably we'll see like Samsung show off their RAM in like 2019 with it not coming to market until probably 2020 is the absolute earliest I would expect, probably more realistically later than that. But there are some significant improvements that actually would make it worth upgrading to much sooner. So for one, the big news here is that they are adding a non-volatile storage standard to the DRAM spec. So with this, it'll be able to handle up to 1 terabyte of storage, and the latency will be in the hundreds of nanoseconds. So this is a lot better than what we see on most things. I'm pretty sure it's even better than what we have on Optane from Intel, because what I remember correctly, Intel's Optane was about 100 times more latency than DRAM in general, whereas if I remember correctly, DRAM is like 10 nanoseconds or in the tens. So this is only about a 10x increase. So it's actually like 10 times less latency than Optane.
Right, which is still not bad by any means.
Which by the time this actually comes out, Optane could be caught up. So we'll see. But yeah, ultimately, we're going to see a new standard for storage. But then on top of that, DDR5 in general is going to be a lot better. So we've started to see with Ryzen where RAM speed actually does matter, because what they're doing is they're handling the Infinity Fabric's clock is running at the clock of the memory controller. With DDR5, we're looking at double the speed and double the density.
One thing I also want to throw in is we do have something in here later that actually relates to another reason that RAM speeds matter when it comes to integrated GPUs, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at more storage, faster storage, and flash storage coming from the DDR5 spec. So next year we'll have a lot more information, but they've started hinting at what's to come, and it's pretty exciting because, especially with Ryzen making RAM speed matter, this is all good.
Yeah.
And there's a competitor to Optane, which I really like, because let's be real, is AMD going to come out with an Optane competitor? Not anytime soon.
I could probably see Samsung coming out with an Optane competitor.
Yeah. I mean,
they manufacture DRAM. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Samsung's NAND has proven time and time and time again. Samsung, I don't understand how they do it, but they've proven time and time again that they are the best silicon manufacturer, and time again that they are the best NAND and flash and all forms of DRAM manufacturer. They know what they're doing when it comes to manufacturing detailed components. I don't know how the hell they do it. I don't know how the hell they swooped in and they were basically like, hey, we're Samsung, hi Intel, hi Qualcomm, hi AMD. Yeah, we make the best silicon now.
Yeah.
I don't fucking understand, but they do.
It amazes me that they can have their silicon division be so perfect compared to everyone else, and then they can blow up batteries and washing machines.
I don't understand.
And there was a fire at one of their stores recently.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. That was funny. Yeah. I don't get it, but what I will say is, their silicon and their DRAM and everything and their NAND is just absolutely top notch. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they're currently working on something to compete this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It almost just makes sense at this point for anyone that hasn't already invested a ton of money like Intel to just wait for DDR5, especially someone like Samsung, to just manufacture the DRAM that's going to go in these.
Yeah, right. And my this is actually another reason why I'm not going to be upgrading PC, I don't think, for very much for a while, other than storage. I think a lot of new things are going to be happening. I mean, they always are, but I think in particular next year with things like faster storage and potentially substantially cheaper SSDs, which we'll get to in a bit, and other things like that. At that point, that's why a lot of people will be surprised that watch this channel and not going to be doing many PC upgrades for a while. Although I'll still be trying to get as many products as I can to review for you guys, but I won't be doing as many upgrades myself. I have other means of spending my money.
Yeah. And one thing that I would like to see, I know this won't happen right away, but maybe 3-4 years down the line, is Microsoft take the dedicated DirectX processing unit type product that they made for the Scorpio and allow board partners to put that in on the motherboard to be off of the CPU, or even just allow like AMD to integrate it into their CPU. But allow that to happen on PC where they would gain those significant performance improvements. It's not going to happen anytime soon because they're trying to compete with PC on the Scorpio, but I think it would be something that'd be really cool to see on PC.
Yeah, I think so. I think that makes sense. I actually want to mention something too before we move on to the next topic. Mirko, the other guy on my channel here, some of you guys probably know him. He just made a comment here. The only real deep learning card NVIDIA has is the NVIDIA Tesla K80, most popular among the industry and cloud computing, unless you have their $129,000 supercomputer. So what I'll first say is Mirko's in the industry, because of his school, so he does know what he's talking about, so I do believe him on this. So that even makes more of an argument towards the Titan X and Titan XP and the Titan XP2 being less of a deep learning and more of a gaming-oriented card. That is, I feel almost like NVIDIA is basically like, hey, everybody, we want people to subtly know it's a deep learning card so that people are willing to spend more money on it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, though, again, I'm actually okay with the $1,200 price tag with these 3840 CUDA core yields. But back when it had the 3580 CUDA cores, I was not okay with the $1,200 price tag. I was like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
So, really what it is, though, is it's, hey, deep learning, so you rich people can be like, I'm going to buy this card because it's deep learning and I have money. This fucking pisses me off. So thank you for that, Mirko. Want to move on to the next topic?
Sure.
So this is kind of a big one, actually. So basically, Intel has adopted something that AMD came up with, and it'll probably make its way to being the industry standard because of this. So a while back, AMD released, basically announced the HSA, Heterogeneous System Architecture Foundation, that was basically in layman's terms, allowing the GPU and the CPU on an APU to communicate more directly by sharing memory and stuff like that, allowing things to basically dynamically locate certain tasks to the GPU that the GPU handles better and certain tasks to the CPU that the CPU handles better, both quicker because it doesn't have to go through the PCI Express slots and the board and all that, and also more often because there's still a lot of things that CPUs do in computers that really realistically a GPU should be handling, but they are just sent to the CPU because that's the way things are set up. Well, Intel has essentially said that they're adopting this heterogeneous system architecture idea. Basically, they're kind of adopting something that AMD came out with. AMD didn't. They pushed it, but the developer support and stuff behind this sort of thing didn't really seem very good. And so even though we were seeing substantial proof of real-world performance improvements, the fact that AMD didn't have enough of the market isn't going to convince anybody to actually invest any time or money into it. When companies see, hey, we have 10% of a market that only has 2 companies in it, essentially, then other companies that may be looking into this sort of thing, developers and other stuff like that, are going to go, whatever, we don't care. We don't care if it's next generation. There's no money in that. Now that Intel may be, potentially adopting this sort of thing, really kind of should say to us that it's going to become a big thing and that AMD had the right idea, which is kind of what I've always said, is AMD has had the right idea for a very long time, repeatedly about a lot of things, but they have trouble implementing it because they don't have enough market share, and they also have trouble keeping it so open that they end up getting shut down, these projects that they have that are awesome. Like, we haven't heard anything about HSA since back in 2014 when it was a big deal. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about this whole thing?
I mean, I love that they're working on something new, and especially I love that AMD came up with something that's good enough that Intel wants to copy. We'll have to wait and see how it really affects consumer market, because I mean, they very well could just be working on this for things like, the article mentions how it's ideas for chips in drones and chips in cars and stuff. This could be something that Intel decides to skip on consumer hardware.
Yeah,
I just don't know right now. I love the idea. I just kind of need to see more detail from Intel.
Right, from Intel directly. And the other thing I'll say too, I probably should have mentioned, is another approach is Intel's talking about putting high-end ARM chips alongside x86 chips. So things that are better processed on ARM chips are also grabbed and done by the ARM chip. Now, a lot of what AMD advertises with their APUs, the HSA stuff, was basically they have a shared memory pool so that they can communicate practically directly. The CPU and GPU actually have the same cache system in there that they can talk to, which was pretty interesting. Your keyboard's echoing, you dick. Yeah, so anyway, basically different kind of chips that on the same die, basically, that are going to allow them to communicate together to basically locate whichever chip is best at that particular task. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm always happy to see changes in the PC industry. It got so boring for so long and now we're seeing all of this change at once.
Yeah, it's just like boom. We have 14 nanometer GPUs. We have 14 nanometer Ryzen chips. We have HSA. We've got Optane. We've got DDR5. We've got a lot of shit happening.
Yeah,
and I'm excited. This is why I'm waiting, and I'm just like, I'm not going to invest my money now. Next year, I'm going to do a bunch of PC shit.
The Nintendo Switch could actually mean some significant changes for PCs as well, because one thing that I haven't really seen many PC people talk about that I feel like is a bigger deal than most people realize is the Switch is running Maxwell-based ARM, and yet it's extremely easy for developers to port over games from PS4 and Xbox One, which is x86. Since when was that an extremely easy process?
Yeah.
So whatever, and NVIDIA did custom back-end software for this hardware specifically for Nintendo. Whatever they did is glorious to make it be able to be that easy to port to. And that could mean, because ARM is kind of catching up to, especially at least the smaller chips. So we might, this could be the start of seeing something like Windows being able to switch to ARM without losing all of the applications like we've previously seen with something like Windows 10 or Windows RT.
That's a good point, which if we can get Windows to run on ARM more properly, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And x86 is still great.
Yeah.
And ARM has its advantages.
Yeah. And if I'm sure that NVIDIA is doing this both to work with Nintendo, but then also for them to just kind of learn about making this work. Theoretically, I wonder if they might be able to make some kind of compatibility layer on the processor that would just allow x86 software to work. And then it improve with optimizations. But if they can just get it to work to the point where they could release a laptop running just like NVIDIA's what's their CPU that they made? The Denver cores.
Yeah.
If they can release like a laptop that's running Denver cores and a Tegra or GPU, that could be a game changer for laptops because of the power consumption.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point.
That's like another potential change that we could see.
I think laptops are seeing I think we have a lot of future that's going to be coming into the portable desktop and then the laptop realm. That we're going to be seeing a lot of changes, I think, soon. In particular, I think we're going to also start seeing things like 8-core chips in laptops and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I would be surprised if Ryzen for laptops didn't have an 8-core model.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised by that too, considering their TDPs. What we really need, we need a laptop that has a Ryzen 8-core or potentially a Ryzen 16-core if those do become a thing, and then 4 RX 580s.
No, what we need is a laptop with each key having its own single core processor under each key on the keyboard. So
that'd be interesting.
You have an entire set of cores just all over your computer. Your computer is literally just cores.
But those cores only work when the keys are pressed down. That way, if you type faster, your computer goes faster.
That would be cancer.
All right, you ready to move on to the next one? The Tizen stuff? Or wait, no, is that not the next one?
Next thing is the SSDs.
Oh, okay, yeah, so big deal. Okay, so SSD prices are, I wouldn't say likely, but definitely could. This is according to PC Gamer. That's why I don't 100% trust it. Could see a steep decline in 2018, which shouldn't be a surprise at all. They've been on a steep decline for quite some time, other than the beginning of this year. But basically, Calvin says stop giving Corsair ideas. But anyway, basically, so SSD prices might, let's see, they've jumped as much as 36% in some places because of what's recently been happening, which actually in a sense leaves more room for a decline in SSD prices. So then at that point, even if we see a 50% decline, it's really only a 14% decline from the original SSD prices of last year, because SSD prices have gone up because there's been a NAND shortage. So basically, they think that the rest of 2017 will kind of drop down to normal, but 2018 prices might go into a free fall and return to where they were before they started rising in the first place. So basically, they're thinking it's going to go back down to probably lower than it was, a couple of years ago, which would be really good because people have been wanting to be able to actually afford to move to like all SSD type storage. And their PCs, and it'd be really nice to be able to do that. In fact, I almost did it in one of my desktops. I ended up needing more storage for videos, but I bought a 1 terabyte SSD for $300, which is pretty cheap, and you can get them for sub $300 now. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at below $200 for a terabyte SSD, which is a big deal. I mean, it's still not hard drive territory of a terabyte being $40 to $50, but it's definitely what we need. So let's hope it happens, I guess is what I'll say. But
yeah. Now, do we know if
let's not talk too long about it.
Okay, this is TLC and MLC they're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing about SLC, I don't believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So okay.
Cool. I want cheaper SSDs, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm happy as well. Let's see. So we have a leak of the RX 580. From
AKA 480 clock speed boost.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Basically,
AKA the only thing AMD ever does.
Fucking hell. Well, and the thing is too, is it's the way they brand it. Because if you look at like CPUs, like Intel technically rebrands CPUs too, so to speak. It's the same architecture. Just
but
improved.
AMD
but
rebrands and then clock speed boosts.
Yeah, that's true. That's really all. Yeah, I guess there's less being done. But yeah, the point is, it's a leak from WCCF Tech, so take it with a pretty good grain of salt. I love them, and they're honest when they market a leak, but it is a leak. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But leaks are more likely to be true than rumors. Basically, though, we're looking at the RX 580. 570 and 550 all running on Polaris, which will be, essentially the same as the 400 series that we have right now. It'll just have clock speed boost. There's really not much to talk about it. We're looking at the RX 580 probably being clocked around 1340 megahertz, and it'll be available in 8 and 4 gig variants, just like the RX 480. And the memory clocks at 8 gigahertz. So there's really not much else to talk about. It'll be 200 to 250 depending on the RAM usage. Basically the same price. So anyway. Yeah.
Very interesting. I want to see their actual new GPUs. I'm tired of rebrands.
I am too. And honestly, I'd be happy if they'd come out with a really high-end Polaris chip. I want to see some architecture unison here, AMD. Be like, hey, ba-boom, RX 580, all Polaris. We have a top end and a lower end than the 400 series has. That's what I'd like to see. I am honestly getting a little bit sick of this from AMD, specifically because it's the rebrand clock speed boost, like you said. It's annoying because there's no unison There's no, I can't just go, oh yeah, the 500 series, yeah, that's their Polaris architecture when I'm talking about it. I've got to go, oh yeah, well this, 580, which one's that? Oh, that's Polaris. And so you never know. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see an RX 590 running on the fucking Vega GPUs.
Yeah,
which is going to piss me off because
for all of the shit that NVIDIA gets for naming, and fully well deserved with the Titan XP 1.5, one thing that they did right is they only do the stupid naming on the high end, because when they fucked up the naming on the 800 series for laptops, they skipped it for desktops just because it was confusing.
Yeah, they were like, nope.
Because
so
they had
true.
like I think it was the 860 for laptops was one architecture, and then the 70 and 80 were another. So then when they were going to do desktops, they just said, okay, we'll skip this and only do Pascal.
Right. Yeah.
So, come on, AMD. And then, for their Polaris, it doesn't even make sense. Like, the higher the number Polaris, the lower the end of the chip. Like, Polaris 11 is the 460, Polaris 10 is the 480.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. I'm just getting a little bit frustrated with this because they're doing so good with Ryzen. Don't fuck up your GPU department.
Yeah.
And if there's rebrands, just piss everybody off. Just wait. Just leave the cards you currently have. Be like, you don't. That's the thing is NVIDIA has learned, and I think Intel has too. You don't have to release something every year.
Yeah.
You can chill for a year and a half or 2 years if you want, which AMD learned on their CPU side with Ryzen. Just chill. Just, all right, fine. If this is what you got, you know what? Maybe try and release a really high-end Polaris card. That's it. Called the RX 490. And then next year you release the 500 series running all Vega Unison with freaking 7 GPUs. That's what you should do. None of this, because it gets so confusing because they release things then so randomly. And so, what we might end up seeing is an RX 580, 570, and 550, and then 2 months later, a 590, and then the 600 series after that, which is just rebrands of the other stuff. But then, they'll upgrade the 680 will be also a Vega, and so then we'll have the 670 being the Polaris chip from the 580. This is the kind of shit they've been doing for years, and it's getting so confusing. I can't keep up with it, and I follow them closely. So, anyway, we can move on to the next topic now. So speaking of the GPUs, Power Color has teased an RX 580. Basically, it's I'll put the link here actually in the chat on our thing so that people can look at it. So yeah, there's a link in the chat now that you guys will be able to see. But basically, we're looking at triple fan cooling, so probably some pretty good overclocking, which we do know that there's pretty decent overclocking headroom, at least on the Polaris chips, which is good. Other than that, nothing special. No PCI Express power connectors, which isn't exactly special by any means. The 480 did have PCI Express power connector, 1 6-pin, I believe it was, but whatever. It's cool. Let's hope it means something. I just hope we see something special in the GPU market from AMD that they're just keeping tightly wrapped so that we don't know about it yet. But that's all there really is about those. Next topic is, in a sense, AMD related. Vulkan API. So Vulkan is a low-level API, for those of you who don't know, that competes directly with DirectX 12. Vulkan API is based on the Mantle API that was developed by AMD quite some time ago. And it's a big deal. AMD, I felt like, kind of developed Mantle to basically compensate for the fact that their CPUs were lacking. And so we had games like Battlefield 4, I believe it was, Battlefield 4, that was when you switch to the Mantle API. I had an AMD FX 8150, and I was running pretty decent FPS, but nothing special, and also lots of background tasks. And then all of a sudden, I turned on Mantle, which is supposed to reduce your basically your CPU usage greatly, your CPU draw calls, because it's a low-level API. I saw almost a doubling in FPS because my GPU was able to fully open up. And what it was is also a lot of the testing around Mantle made it look bad, and there was nobody that really came out and said, hey, no, all you people that have been testing it are testing it wrong. But people were testing the lower level APIs incorrectly. The idea of the lower level API is less CPU draw calls, therefore less CPU usage, therefore less CPU bottlenecking. And what was happening, though, is people were doing a normal, what you should normally do when benchmarking, and they're having a test bench that it was Windows, Steam, one game, and or basically Windows and a game, and the drivers and basic stuff to run. That's it. And then swapping back and forth between Mantle and DirectX 11, and they're like, yeah, it's like 5-10 FPS, like not really worth it at all, even on AMD chips. The problem is they were testing in a CPU light workload, whereas if your computer's literally not doing anything else, the AMD architecture at the time wasn't that far behind Haswell from Intel. It was behind, and you did see a better improvement on the AMD chips versus the Intel chips when switching to a low-level API like that, but it wasn't as big of a deal. But if you actually tested it with doing a bunch of stuff, you saw substantial performance improvements even on Intel because it just reduces CPU draw calls.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, point is, that was the whole idea behind Mantle. Mantle became Vulkan, which is owned by Valve now, I believe, but it's open source. And it looks like Vulkan's actually being a really big deal. So we're seeing massive performance improvements, exactly what we thought we would see. Over here, Foronix, I think it is. I'll post a link for this one as well, actually, for you guys. They basically have shown a whole bunch of GPUs, NVIDIA in specific, to basically give people an idea that it's not just an AMD thing, and they're seeing up to double the FPS, over double the FPS, sorry, in some games. So basically Vulkan's looking like it might be not only better than DirectX 12, which we kind of already knew it was, but also becoming more popular with games, which is a huge deal. And working on not just AMD hardware, which is a huge deal, meaning it could end up being what takes over the entire API market.
I think that the biggest issue, the biggest competition for Vulkan is going to be games that are also released on Xbox One.
Yeah, because DirectX 12.
Any multi-platform game is going to inherently be a little bit better by running DX12.
Yes, this is true. And also keep in mind, sorry, I meant to mention this. The Vulkan here, the double up to double or more in performance, this is versus OpenGL, not versus DirectX 11, which is better than OpenGL. So we're probably looking at, I'd take roughly 20% off of whatever performance improvements you see if you were versing DirectX 11. I haven't tested this by any means. This is just me throwing out a number. But basically, we're looking at versus OpenGL, which was the previous open, API that everybody could use. Now, Vulkan being bigger, though, is a big deal for people that are running Linux or Mac. We could actually start, if Vulkan took over enough, we could actually see potential for Apple maybe even releasing something that is pretty good at gaming and seeing people that can run Linux, so we don't all be forced into Windows, which is all Microsoft's really trying to do with DirectX, is say you have to use our shit so they can make cash from it.
Speaking of Apple and hardware and interesting things, they finally talked about the Mac Pro.
Yeah,
and
you forgot to put that in the doc.
I put it in the doc. It's the next topic, which is why I was transitioning to it.
Sounds good to me.
So essentially what happened was they invited I think it's like 3 or 4 news outlets to this meeting where they talked about the Mac Pro. A lot of people felt that they were just ignoring Pro users, which is what it seemed like they were doing. I mean, the Mac Pro came out in 2013, and there's been almost no spec changes whatsoever since then. Well, turns out Apple made a mistake, admitted they made a mistake, which is the interesting part, and kind of talked about their plans for fixing it.
I will say Apple's been good about admitting mistakes in the past, though.
Not like really.
I mean, I'd say they're good at admitting them. Not necessarily at realizing some things are mistakes, but when they realize it, admitting to it.
You mean like how when they realized that the iPhone, what was it, the 4S, you had to hold in one hand because if you held it in the left hand, it wouldn't work, and so their solution was just hold it in your right hand or get a case. That's not admitting mistake.
Okay, that's true. That's a good point.
But this is a pretty big deal because essentially they straight up said that they designed themselves into a thermal corner where this Mac Pro design, while it worked great for the hardware that they had made it with, it was very hard to upgrade and change things because of how space constraining they made it.
Right, which it actually makes
different
sense.
CPUs, it's very hard to put in there. Different GPUs, it's especially hard to put in there because GPUs can vary in size.
Well, it's custom boards too that they have to remanufacture for different GPUs. And then, if you're looking at more stuff that's required to, say, be put on the board, so then they can't make the board the same size, you're looking at less cooling capacity. So, I mean, it makes sense why they weren't able to. Plus, a lot of the CPUs, albeit are more power efficient, but still put off even more heat than previous generations.
Yeah. So what they've announced is they are working on a more modular version of the Mac Pro. It will not release this year. It could be next year. It could not be until 2019. They don't know. But long story short, they're making a Mac Pro more akin to the old Mac Pros, where theoretically, a new GPU comes out that's Mac compatible. You'll be able to swap it. Things like that. That'll be big for the pro users.
Which is cool. Yeah. This Mac Pro was such a mistake.
Yeah. And then for the semi-pro users who maybe don't necessarily need the super high end, but they want something a lot better. So especially for people that buy an iMac for photo editing and things like that. They will be releasing an iMac Pro later this year with bumped up specs that are more of a middle ground in between the iMac and the Mac Pro, which I think is very interesting and could lead the way to maybe an iMac with a gaming GPU. I mean, if they're already going to be putting in a better GPU for pro users, I think that it's worth them just making a gaming version of the iMac, honestly. Especially
I think you're right. Yeah, if Vulkan gains enough ground, they definitely should. Yeah. They should make an iMac for pro use and an iMac that can game well. Yeah, and that would be great because
if they had the hardware to support it, they'd get game developers on board. I mean, let's look at VR. I think it was Oculus that was talking about this a long time ago. They were talking about how it'll come out for the PC and Linux, and then someone had asked about your finger is in the camera. They had talked about if it would ever release on Mac, and they said no because it's not powerful enough.
Right. Yeah.
They just said no. We have no intention on even trying because it's too weak.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. And I think a lot of people like the aesthetic that Apple goes for and stuff. And so if we actually were able to get gaming on, and it'd still be overpriced, of course, versus PC. But there are a lot of people that have legitimate reasons for wanting to go with Mac, not ones that I necessarily agree with, but they have the reasons and they go that way. And if we can make it so that those people can also game on there, it basically makes it increases the gaming market as a whole, and also brings more people to a more desktop environment gaming platform, which is pretty cool.
Now, honestly, though, one thing that Apple needs to realize and needs to do is they need to release their new actual Mac Pro as soon as possible.
Because there are people that are so desperate for it. This one's old.
Well, beyond that, though, for a lot of businesses that use Mac Pros for video editing and whatnot, 3 years is a long time to not upgrade. Asking them to wait another year, and realistically, until you show off the computer, there's no guarantee to them that you're going to do things right. Even with what they've talked about so far,
maybe start pushing them
there's already been a lot of companies that switched to PC. I mean, in the Reddit thread for this, when this first was announced, I saw a ton of comments that were saying it's too late. Our company's already switched to PC. Sucks for Apple.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Apple made a mistake and they didn't recover it quick enough.
The Mac Pro is already a single-digit part of their income, and they're just losing business. So they need to do something great, and they need to do it as quickly as they can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the quickly, I think, is the thing that really needs to be emphasized here. They need to at least come out with a pretty dang powerful iMac Pro like that.
Yeah.
Because then the semi-pros and even a lot of the pro places that don't need top-notch for major video production could buy those and be like, it's good enough. And then a year or two from now, when the best Mac Pro comes out, or when the next version of the next Mac Pro comes out, so 2 generations ahead, they can upgrade to that. Yeah. So something in the meantime to grab them before they switch to PC.
Yeah. If they can hit the time frame, I think what would be best for them is release the iMac Pro, or when they release the iMac Pro, they tease the body of the Mac Pro, and then also they did announce that they are going to be doing new Apple-made displays. Unlike how this year or last year, I guess, they did the LG 5K display. They will be bringing back the proper Apple Thunderbolt displays, which is great because those displays were fantastic. Sure, they're extremely overpriced, but they're fantastic displays.
But they are fantastic. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And so they need to launch the iMac Pro and then end the event. And as they're like walking off stage, throw up like a teaser image of like a silhouette of a Mac Pro and the Thunderbolt display.
They should just start remaking the body they had in 2007.
Yeah. And then end of this year, they need to do a little bit more of a teaser and say, hey, it's coming. Like if they can hit this time frame, first half of next year is when it's coming out. Like start building up the hype for it slowly, but don't wait until the event to announce it because they've already talked about it.
Yeah, because they need, it needs to be known, especially to big companies, that they're coming out with something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm hoping, though, it's a more of a desktop-like build, that can be user upgraded with standard PCI Express GPUs and stuff.
I don't want them to do this, but I would even be more okay with them if they went like full Razer CES a couple years ago and made their own custom modular system. As long as you can fucking just buy a GPU, even if it costs a little more, and stick it in there, that's better than anything they've done in the Pro line for a long time.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
And to me, something like that modular system would actually, I feel like if anyone was going to do it first, it would be Apple. Because for one, they can both get away with charging more for stuff because they charge more for everything. But then on top of that, they focus so much on compatibility and stability that it wouldn't be surprising
proprietary stuff.
if they limited the amount of GPUs that are sold for the Mac Pro by custom handling the connection. And
I think that's
if it's something where I can literally like press a button and pop out the GPU and slide a new one in, then hey, that's pretty cool. I'll take it.
Yeah, right. Like, if you're a Mac user when it comes to any power user stuff, it makes total sense. It just needs to be upgradable because that's really important to longevity, especially to big companies that are going to be buying things like this. Being able to buy it and be like, oh, yeah, we can buy this thing. We can keep it like 6 years because we can do upgrades along the way. Yeah. So it's a really good investment. We just keep the same board and everything, just swap CPUs, GPUs, and maybe add some RAM. Boom. You got the prosumer and you've got the business market right there.
Yeah, and they also need ample internal storage space because what's on the Mac Pro right now where you effectively need to use Thunderbolt and USB for extra storage is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's dumb. For the Pro market, that's a dumb idea.
They need a built-in NVMe drive on all Mac Pros out of the box with room for a second M.2 NVMe, and because it'll likely be Intel PCIe NVMe compatibility. Like they need to be able to just support a ton of NVMe and then regular SATA.
Yeah, I agree. Yep, SATA 3 and 2 to 4 NVMe slots. Even if 2 of those NVMe slots in specific are for Optane cache stuff.
Yeah.
Something. And of course, they need to come out with something that's generic enough and easy enough to duplicate so that they can make also things like motherboards and stuff later down the road with newer features for cheap.
Yeah, and in fact, seeing as how they've done this before where they've made their own version of hybrid drives, maybe something where they do their own version of a hard disk drive with Optane built in would be something somewhat realistic for what they've done.
It would be, yeah. It's just, I hope they do it right this time. I'll be interested in seeing what happens. But some more Apple news, because I actually do have to get going pretty soon, unfortunately. We're getting through a lot of news tonight, though. I like this. So, other Apple news. Apple has, this is a rumor from WCCF Tech, Salt. Anyway.
Also, not only WCCF Tech that originally reported it. So there was a lot of places.
Yeah, there's a lot of places, but it's still a rumor. So Apple has reportedly asked Samsung for 70 million OLED panels for its upcoming iPhone, which isn't surprising by any means at all, because everybody's been telling Apple they need to go to OLED on their iPhones forever because it's more power efficient, it's better looking, it's more vibrant, they take up less space. So many reasons to go with it, and Apple will remove the headphone jack to take up less space, but they won't freaking get rid of their LCD and go to an OLED. So it's about time they do this. I guess my thing here is there is the potential that maybe this could be OLED panels for like a display for like maybe the iMac. So it doesn't necessarily mean
doubt it because
that would
they're not
probably
going to sell 70 million iMacs.
This is true, and I guess in that situation they'd probably be getting the panels made by LG.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're partnered with them. So this is most likely, if this is true, yeah, it is most likely for iPhone. I can see why they came to that conclusion. But I hope that this happens. I'd really like to see OLED on more phones. In fact, that's one of the few things that I don't like about my LG V20 is the fact that it doesn't have an OLED, although it makes up for it with the second screen up there. That does help a lot. But yeah, OLED's the future. It's the way everything should be moving over time. OLED, HDR, high refresh rate, which OLED can be made high refresh rate really easy. So I really wish that would be more of a thing and better response time. It's also showed by an analyst that Samsung has the capability to deliver as much as 95 million OLED panels to Apple if they ever need it. So that actually makes sense, basically saying, hey, Samsung has the ability to actually feed the iPhone market with this very quickly. So I hope it happens.
And Apple generally has the best displays on the market, but the S8 is currently rated as, by a significant margin, the best display because it's HDR premium through the UHD Alliance. It's just an overall glorious display. So them going for a Samsung-made top-tier OLED display just makes sense. It's going to be the only way they beat Samsung at their own game is to use Samsung.
Use Samsung's panel and then do some maybe better background optimization. But color management and stuff. My other thing here is I would really like to see more OLED when it comes to full-size panels. I really wish that we had OLED monitors, again, with HDR and high refresh rate.
Yeah. I still think the only reason we don't is screen burn-in is still being worked out. It's a little bit different on a phone when a majority of the time the phone is off.
Right. Well, not only that, but also with screen burn-in, if you were to avoid it on on like a television or something, a TV would be easier, but especially on like a Windows machine or something, Windows would have to have its own basically low-level programming to basically say, hey, if you're connected to an OLED panel, make sure you give it a screensaver.
Yeah.
No way to override that at all. This is what there needs to be. There needs to be something in there that basically forces Windows to do some kind of active screensaver that literally you cannot go in and change unless you freaking do registry edits or something, because you shouldn't want to change it. So that way the consumers can't have it broken. So I guess, you're right. That makes sense to me.
I know this would never happen, but I wonder if a display manufacturer would ever just test a display that was an OLED panel, but then there was a super tiny bezel in between the display and where Windows would put the taskbar on the bottom. And then it was a non-OLED display on the bottom, like just an LCD strip, similar to how Apple has the OLED strip on their MacBook Pros. Something so they could have the taskbar, never have to worry about burning there, have OLED for the rest of it.
That would be doable because we can make bezels thin enough at this point you wouldn't notice that there is one there.
Yeah.
I mean, the physical bezel would be one pixel.
Marketable product, but I mean, I would just love to see that is something that they've just like messed with.
Right. I would love, that's the idea.
Product even.
Yeah. Although OLED does exist on PC too, in case you didn't know. Alienware 13 you can get OLED on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is a thing. I hope it becomes a big thing.
I think
I'm probably not going to upgrade my monitor until I can get an OLED HDR, fucking 120 plus hertz G-Sync display.
Oh, Dell canceled their OLED monitor.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on, I feel like, with large OLED displays in the background.
Yeah.
Because they've been getting shown off by like CES and stuff for years. I think there's something going on that we maybe just don't know about. It's making
Dell killed the 4K 27-inch 120 hertz OLED monitor because of technical difficulties. So. Yeah,
there's something going on, and I don't know if it's politics amongst companies, so to speak, or if it's some technical issue. But there is. I mean, Dell said that, I know, but.
Yeah, I
I'm
feel
just
like
saying
it's that it's a technical issue, not a back end issue.
I think
even if it was, then we'd see
more
Samsung
likely.
or LG release an OLED display since they make OLED panels.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Although LG licenses all the technology from Samsung, right? Because they're the owner of OLED, technically, right? I believe Samsung owns OLED technology. They developed it, so they have to be licensed. But even so, point is, yeah, OLED is what we're going to be seeing more of. And I'd like to see OLED monitors. I'm getting fucking
yeah.
But, okay. One more thing to talk about, really, realistically.
Use Tizen, get hacked. That's it.
Yeah. So basically, Samsung's Tizen OS, which they've been talking about putting on phones, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually why they haven't put it on phones ever, other than various other reasons. Basically, Tizen's OS is garbage when it comes to security, like super bad. So I'll quote here, and this does exist on some TVs, and it does exist on the smartwatches like the Gear S3 and stuff. They are running Tizen. So Tizen has been. This is a quote from a Israeli researcher. I can't pronounce his name. Says it. I quote: "It may be the worst code I've ever seen. Many of them are the kind of mistakes programmers were making 20 years ago, indicating that Samsung lacks basic code development and review practices to prevent and catch such flaws." See, now here's the thing. They can't program an OS, to be secure worth shit. But like you said, they can manufacture the best silicon on the planet.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
And they can make tanks that are really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But they have trouble programming. Like I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this kind of stuff is like. How is it that bad? It's like the exploding batteries. Like we've had batteries before where once in a while they catch on fire or they'll bulge or something like that. Then all of a sudden Samsung's like, yeah, they all explode, just let you know. So we're gonna have to recall that. It's like, how does these things happen? I mean, maybe the company is so big they're like getting out of their own scope in a sense or something. Because I mean,
think
a lot of people don't
really
realize
what they need to do is kind of go the alphabet route where they split up their different divisions and have them run as their own company, even if it's not actually its own company. Set up, here is the leader of this department. You treat it like its own company and you report to us. If it does bad, then that is bad for you as if it was your own company.
Yeah, I think that's what they should do because they're not taking any of the grief if something does do bad, and they'll have to take the load off these people if they don't want to.
Yeah,
and it allows things to stay substantially more organized because this is getting some of these weird things are getting out of hand. And like I really like Samsung actually, maybe not as a company, but I like what they're capable of doing because they're so big. But also I'll say if there's any freaking Skynet out there, it's Samsung.
Yeah.
It's just they're the hidden one that nobody expects to be.
I would love to see Samsung 100% get out of the software game. Stop making Tizen, stop making smartwatch OSs, stop making stupid, terrible smart TV OSs. Give us stock Android on your beautiful phones. And if you need to make like camera modifications or anything, that's one thing. But pretty much stock Android. Give us Chromecast built into your TVs because Chromecast is just better than smart TV UIs in general. Give us Android for smartwatches and make Samsung pay open source. And I would love you forever.
Yeah,
as long as you don't blow me up with your phones.
Yeah, because Samsung's software team just isn't very good, to be honest. Although, of course, they have security problems with Tizen, but they can add in good security features to Android.
Yeah, because they've been doing
that forever. Yeah, because they can do what?
Knox.
Yeah. So I don't understand why this is so bad. Maybe Samsung just doesn't give a shit. That's part of what I wonder. Not about the battery thing; they cared about that, but I partially wonder if this whole Tizen thing is just Samsung saying, we don't really care. We're just kind of fucking around with it because we have this OS.
Tizen has always been this thing in the background that they've been slowly working on as something for if they need to separate themselves from Android for any reason, they have that option.
Yeah.
That is their going nuclear option is, oh shit, we can pull out an OS that can run Android apps. Tizen, just like BlackBerry, can have an Android layer running on top of it, use the Amazon App Store, and it's got its own apps. There you go.
Right, yeah,
so they could pull Tizen out at any second if they need to, but not when it's this buggy, not when it's this hackable, not when it's this trash.
Yeah, it's so unsecure. Yeah, that's the thing. It's so bad. They need to work on it more because...
Especially since Tizen OS on smartwatches and Samsung Pay on smartwatches Hello, that's a huge security issue.
Well, and your smartwatch is Bluetooth connected to your phone.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
that's a security hole.
Samsung
Bluetooth isn't very secure.
Samsung Pay alone, though, like the whole point with these types of like Android Pay and Samsung Pay, before they get card issuers on board, they have to prove security. So with something like this coming to light, that there's an OS level, a massive OS level security flaw, that's going to probably worry some cardholders. And I mean, it depends on how things progress from this. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see, maybe even if it's only smaller ones for now, if we see a card issuer or two pull back from Samsung Pay.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that, or at least pull back from it being available on smartwatches.
I don't think there's a separate option.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right there. Yeah, it's probably all inclusive. So and that sucks because Samsung Pay is the best one right now.
Yeah.
Period. And the other thing is, I lost my train of thought because I do that because I'm an idiot. Bluetooth isn't very secure, and especially on some of the older smartwatches that are running Tizen. They're using like Bluetooth 3.0, 4.0. Bluetooth has never been known to be that secure, although 4.0, from what I've heard, is a lot better. But Bluetooth has had its issues for quite some time. In fact, it used to be a really long while ago. It used to be a really good way to, packet capture and all kinds of other stuff from, people in like, Starbucks or whatever, to be able to listen in to what their calls are and, get access to their bank accounts and all that kind of bullshit. So it's really not good seeing something that is probably, to be honest, the biggest thing that sold with Tizen is some of the Gear watches. That's not good.
Yeah. And I mean, like, look at how much data can be pulled from the watch. Contacts are on there, call logs are on there, text messages are on there, payment information's on there. So especially with this information being out, Samsung's got to do something quick, because at this point, people are going to look for Samsung smartwatches and try and hack those.
Right. Yep.
That's probably the best thing to try and hack right now, probably.
Yeah, that's not good. That needs to be patched, and that needs to be patched really quickly, because once news like this gets out, all the actual hackers get on board.
Yeah,
really
and there's
quick.
no way that this information got public without them telling Samsung first. So the fact that Samsung doesn't have a public response saying, "Hey, this is fixed," or "We're working on it," is quite worrying.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Oh man, it's not good. Okay, so last piece of real news here. Okay. So interesting, actually, though, as I read more of the article, it's actually more interesting than I thought. So more people are using Android to get on the internet than any other operating system in the world, period, including Windows.
Yeah. I don't actually find that all that surprising, because...
Oh, it's not surprising. No. Yeah. What it is, though, is it's a historic event, because that hasn't happened before. Windows has been the king since the 80s. Yeah. So there's a place called Stack Counters. They basically track Stack Counters Trackers Peg. Okay, I think it's improper grammar.
No, basically, that's actually correct. So people that track data at Stack Counters peg worldwide Android usage.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
in terms of all devices, so Android-based phones, tablets, mobile watches.
Anything that runs Android,
even computers running Android,
Yeah, at 37.93%, which Windows is at 37.91%, which again doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's a historic event because nobody's been able to knock Windows off its perch since the 1980s. Windows has been the king. So this is actually kind of a big deal, saying that, well, people, actually, it's kind of interesting because here in North America, though, the story is different.
Yeah. So, the thing with something like Android is that, especially since it's open source, is that it allows for, as we've seen, really cheap devices in places like India, where they haven't really been able to get quality internet connected devices. And I mean, there's no doubt that, especially as better and better internet gets into places like Africa, we'll see cheap Android devices, and even, cheap Chromebooks that can run Android apps, things like that, showing up there because they're much more cost effective in countries that don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. So, it makes sense. Yeah, and if you look at North America, Windows is at 39.5% compared to 21.2% on Android. You know what interests me about these stats the most, though?
Mhm.
The fact that Windows isn't over 50% worldwide.
I don't know why that's surprising because you
Well,
have Mac, you have Windows, you have iOS, you have Android. That's the 4 big ones. But then you have
yeah.
Linux. You have server devices still connected to the internet in general, so that's probably
Okay, yeah, that's counted into there, which it probably is, and that skews it
Mhm.
right there. Okay, nope, that makes sense to me. That's everything. I didn't think about that. I was thinking
Yeah.
consumer
And I
devices.
mean, technically,
Specific.
game consoles are internet connected devices, and only the Xbox One actually runs Windows technically.
Yeah, right.
So
Okay, that's a good point.
the
And
Switch is an
also,
internet connected device. The Wii U, the Wii.
right. Android though is also it's been for a while is the leading mobile operating system.
Mhm.
80% of the market is running on Android, so that's
Yeah,
interesting too.
yeah.
But it's a milestone to see Android beat out all operating systems. Period.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
pretty cool there. Pretty
I
cool.
wonder what will eventually beat out Android in fucking 30 years.
Be interesting. It'd be interesting. Yeah, it
Yeah.
probably is something like 30 years away.
Yeah. I mean,
Hey, at
we're
least you know that you'll be close to retirement then, so maybe you can play around with it.
I'm never going to be able to afford to retire in our country.
God. Oh man. Nah, man, just invest in a 401k. You'll be good.
With what money?
You know what? Freaking eat less food.
Okay, I'll just start to get that way I can
Start
retire.
investing. You have a retirement. That way you
I don't need a
die.
retirement fund if I'm already dead.
This is a good point. This is good. See, so it's kind of like a catch-22 here. You don't know
Mhm.
what to do. It's either have a retirement fund and die, or don't die and have no retirement fund.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, works
yeah,
for me.
yes, yep. There you go.
Well, I know what I'll do. I know what I'll do. I'll just eat food and live for now, and then I'll steal a bunch of money from you when you're older.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, at least that points to me being successful. So.
Yeah,
No, thank you, thank you. No, we'll steal
anytime.
money from Mirko. He's the one going to school for computer engineering.
Yeah.
You and I can join forces.
Okay.
I tell Mirko that he can't be a part of WordTech anymore if he doesn't give us each $1 million. No,
Actually,
I'm
no.
just
Me
kidding.
and
I'm just
Mirko
kidding.
were gonna push you out of WordTech. Given that
Fuck
your last
you.
name is literally Word.
Yeah, literally, the company's named after me. People are like, nah, you're out, mate.
Yeah.
No. I
Board of
will never
directors
give
with
up more
me and
than
Mirko.
51%, or sorry, more than 49% of the company. I will
Doesn't
always have
matter.
51%.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
You'll
We'll
just
still
figure
push
it
you out.
out. You'll
Yep.
just figure it out. Okay, sounds good. We're just fucking around, guys, because the show is basically over now. So I
Yeah.
want to say too, Mirko's awesome. I would never do anything against him like that. He's a great guy. So, although Daniel probably won't say anything, you know.
Huh? No, Mirko's cool. He's better
No,
than
but
you.
you probably won't say that. You probably won't apologize to me. You probably won't tell me. You probably actually do want to push me out of the company, even though you're not even the company. You have
Yes,
your
I'm
own.
so worried about stealing a 700 subscriber YouTube channel.
Oh man, you clearly have never seen Silicon Valley. Actually, I've seen one episode with you, Calvin. I liked it. I never watched it again.
Yeah,
Yes, this is true. Yeah, I know you can. I know you can. I know. I'm just fucking around. But
don't worry.
anyway,
I'll make it happen.
fuck you.
I'll do it just to say I did it, and then I'll give you your company back and quit.
So, okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
So,
Damn it. Okay, all right, everybody. Well, that's it for the tech news so far. So don't forget to like and subscribe the video and my channel, and don't forget to subscribe to his channel. Again, that's in the description. Our Minecraft server IP address and Teamspeak server IP address are in the bottom, so you guys are welcome to join and play on those if you'd like. I'm also going to be setting up an Arc one soon. I've been saying that for like 3 months. It's going to happen though at some point.
or you could not sell
follow us on Twitter.
with such shitty developers. Just saying.
I mean, this is true, but it's still fun. So
Yeah, but just because it's fun doesn't mean you need to support shitty people.
yes, it does.
No.
Just kidding. All right, everybody. Well, thank you everybody for watching. So I'm going to click stop the broadcast, but we're probably still going to be here for a second.